Hey, this is Stephen Platinum, your friend in Wrestling with Platinum versus Impact Wrestling from January 26, 2021. Impact continues to have good shows, and one glaring problem that I'm going to address at length. We opened the show with Rich Swann hitting the ring for a promo. Again, some of the booking choices that Impact makes or the way they go about doing things are so strange. But it was great to see Rich Swann there prominently as their champion. Talking about, though, he was like, I'm going to give a title shot to Tommy Dreamer because the 13th, which is the date of No Surrender, it's also his birthday. And, you know, gratitude, and Tommy Dreamer's so great, so I'm going to give him this title shot. Odd. Sami Callihan interrupts, Chris Bay interrupts, a whole bunch of people interrupt, and then a big brawl breaks out. Willie Mack comes in, starts kicking ass for the faces, and then the lights go out, hacker thing, and then they come up and Ken Shamrock attacks everybody. Everybody beats everybody up. Ken Shamrock and the heels leave him laying. This is obviously going to lead to a 6-man at the end of the night, or 8-man, or whatever. A good segment. Definitely a lot got done. Impact has two big flaws. One of them is one half of the show is used to promote the other half of the show. It's a common thing that the WWE gets into. It's a weakness, especially if they're recording shows, then they should be building up future shows instead of just treading water and building up the show as they're doing it. That's one big problem. The other is a lack of crowd, even if they're going to pipe in crowd noise, which is weird to me, but that's whatever, is as rough as it is to do pro wrestling segments, and as rough as it is to do pro wrestling matches when you're not getting genuine reactions and you don't have reaction shots from an audience to really put things over, comedy segments die horrible deaths, and they did a very long one, and it's just fucking rough, man. It's just rough. The next match, Matt Cardona and Josh Alexander. It's weird to see the guy from the North now that he's just kind of floating against Ace Austin and Madman Fulton. A perfectly serviceable match, but again, without a real crowd, it's just hard to get the heat. Matt Cardona looks every bit a star, and he looks really good, and the action is decent, but again, it just everything feels of very little consequence on Impact. Though, you notice the screen capture I'm using is of them hitting the 4 million mark on YouTube, and I think that's really special and really good, and good for Impact, and this AEW thing I'm sure has helped in that regard and really put them over the top. Eddie Edwards against Brian Myers is our next match. Eddie Edwards, I got the story here, which is the Barbed Wire Massacre match changed him a little. Myers targeted his arm. Myers had the bandage over his eye, and that came off, and he was bloodied as well. Very, very brutal match. Myers defeated Eddie Edwards via disqualification. Yeah. It was fine, and again, it just feels like a lot. It feels like it's just hard to place. It just, things at Impact just don't seem to connect fully. And I know that's not really a specific thing, but it just, here's an example. So the next match is Tenille Dashwood against Rosemary. Okay, you want to give Rosemary a win, great. You want Decay to continue to have this momentum, awesome. Why Tenille Dashwood? Why doesn't Rosemary wrestle one of the other numerous women that they have to feel like she's getting something out of this? I mean, that she's advancing, but not at the expense of somebody that they could actually set up a feud with later. Again, that seems like nitpicky stuff. It's not, right? Odd, just odd. The Fire and Flava Fest was god-awful. Just terrible. The comedy stuff. Again, none of this lands. And I know a lot of people get a kick out of Johnny Bravo doing all this kind of stuff, and then Stay Puft Marshmallow Man costume, but it was really Nivea in disguise, and then Havoc comes in with the clothesline, and the top contenders stand tall, and yeah, it's just, I suppose there's an audience that likes this, but it looks all so Bush League, and it's just hard to imagine Impact. I mean, they bookend them with like the best of Impact and TNA stuff. So right before the show went on the air, you've got Samoa Joe, Sting, and Kevin Nash doing something. And then right after this, they have like this best of Madison Rayne, when you realize how awesome she was and how awesome the Beautiful People stuff looked and how pro style it all seemed. And this all just looks so ramshackle. So you have Joe Doring of the Violent Click with Eric Young and Diener against Cousin Jake, who looks like $1,000,000 body wise, but at the end of the day, Doring beats Jake in a match that's just infinitely forgettable. And this Violent by Design faction, yes, on one level they're being booked very effectively, but on another thing, it's just really hard. And I'm somebody who watches a lot of different kinds of pro wrestling, gets into a lot of different kind of stuff, and it's just very hard to connect with this show, and that's a fundamental problem. 8-man tag team main event, a bunch of shit goes down, and again, I think they make a good booking decision here, right? Miguel wipes out Moose with the missile drop kick and then gets the pin on Callahan to score the win for the babyfaces. And it's a good win for Miguel. And then, Shamrock attacks the referee. It all feels fine. It all feels like they had a lot of balls in the air and they managed to keep them in the air. Don't get me wrong. But what I'm looking for from this show is stuff of consequence. And the highlight, once again, was, Tony Khan and Tony Schiavone, sort of Tony Khan getting more and more comfortable healing it up. It's really a remarkable thing to see. We'll see what Impact is going to get out of all this AEW crossover stuff. But the main problem with the AEW crossover stuff is the unintended consequence of AEW seems big league and Impact does not. And I hope they take the steps that make their product look more in line with what AEW is doing. We shall see, though. Anyway, this has been Platinum versus Impact Wrestling.